Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Improv Autopsy. I'm your host, Stephen Cadwell. You're listening to part 2 of my interview with Charlie Downs. I've been looking forward to talking with Charlie for some time. A couple of questions I've been asking others in my Proustian questionnaire are, what do you find most helpful from the booth, and what do you find least helpful from the booth? And I'd been doing that in anticipation of asking those questions in reverse to Charlie. You'll hear his answers in this episode as well as his answers to the rest of those questions. Please enjoy part 2 of Charlie Downs' Improv Autopsy.
Were you ever there for like a show when like we had to leave the old Amelia Street theater for some reason? Like one time we had a blackout or something, like an actual electric blackout. And we all piled outside on like around that fountain. And me and a couple other people from the staff grabbed giant flashlights that we found. And we continued the show out in the sidewalk for another like 20 minutes with just shining lights and making a fake stage right there. That was a fun story. And I guess you probably weren't there for it, but like, it was crazy. It was so awesome.
I was not, but I did hear the story.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was just like Orlando had a blackout. So everything went off and we're like, oh, that's weird. But it was just enough time that we're like, let's see what we can do. And so we all went outside and we pulled up as many lights as we could and shown them on the actors, and the actors did a couple of little skits, and then we ended, and everybody was happy and joyful, and they all had like a crazy story to tell. And
yeah,
no, that was another really fun and in some way kind of a tech moment.
yeah. Very Kaufman-esque sort of a situation to be in, only not intentional.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is just a sidebar. Is SAC still doing narrative collage?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, once again, I've only been there like maybe 4 times this year, if you don't count gigs. They do it. It's always been a challenge. It's always been a challenge for the actors because I don't know, it's one of those things that, well, first you have to have the right tech to begin with to be able to do that storytelling. But then also, I feel like it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. There are several games that I feel like SAC has lost its institutional knowledge of. I feel like we don't do nearly as well with things like 99 Jokes as we used to, or even Schwarzenegger Die. Like, I don't know what it is. And I don't know if it was because when I first started at SAC, we had actors who had done it 1,000 times, 10,000 times. And so Dave Russell or John Hunter can come up, like knows 5 puns instantly and knows how to do it. And I don't know if newer casts have been a little bit more like, well, I'm going to try to reach for something. It used to blow people out of the water, and now I feel like we don't quite get that there as much.
Yeah.
And I feel like narrative collage is the same way. Like somehow conceptually we know what to do, but they either link too fast or they never do link, or they do a lot more scene collage.
Okay, yeah.
Where they don't have to connect. And I guess actually now that I'm talking about it, maybe that's what they do is scene collage and not narrative collage.
You've seen so much. You've probably seen more improv than I have because you've been up in the booth so much.
Yeah.
So some of these, I'm just curious as to what you'd have answers-wise for some of these. So other than the blackout, which could possibly be it, what's the most shocking thing you've seen or done?
A well-placed gunshot in a scene that hasn't specifically called for it, but definitely was going to move the scene along often is really interesting. And that is the finest line to draw. You have to pick the exact right moment. First of all, 99.9% of the time, a gun has to already be drawn. You know what I mean? Like, you really shouldn't do that from just off stage. But there, in the same way that the screeches, there are times when there's that conflict and then nobody's budging at all. And so you hit the gunshot and then somebody on stage has to take the bullet. And inevitably that makes something in the scene happen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's more of a lab rat thing. You know, the ensemble typically, I mean, the same way we got rid of Pink Shoes is because the idea is that we're good enough that when we get into trouble, somebody takes the initiative and does what they need to do. And gunshots now are also a tough sell because of the political climate and things in the last 10 years, because it can be a little too shocking.
Yeah.
That's a simple answer. I'm trying to think if there's anything shocking. I mean, in the same way, I think almost anything I would play as an incidental would seem shocking at first, but the actors have always jumped on it and used it as the way of getting out of the scene. inevitably a camping scene that goes round and round and round, you can play a bear sound effect, and that just causes action to happen. It makes the narrative change, but also incites some kind of action.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something really neat that I did one time that like was really shocking. And then, like you said, the other half of it is those blackouts on things where you're like, well, I guess that's the end of that scene, because we're not gonna, I either don't want actors to go farther in that scene. I mean, not that really that, but like something like that, you know, where you were like, or somebody pretends to take their pants off or something. You're just like, nope, that's it. Or, I mean, I don't know if I was there for the time that Jose got molested, but like, which sounds way worse than I think it probably was. But definitely, I definitely also, it's not shocking, but I think maybe the audience would be a little bit like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. But it's like, there's clearly a reason I'm doing that.
Yeah. I think we were told once, so you have to tell me if this was told to you all up there, but I think I was told once that if a gun came out, it was going to go off. It was kind of like the checkoff rule, but for SAC, and it was going to go off quickly.
Oh, interesting.
So if you pulled a gun on stage, be prepared for it to go off pretty quickly. And I don't know if that was just told to us to prevent us from pulling guns, Michael Scott-wise, on stage, but it did seem to hold true in some ways, like if a gun came out, it fairly quickly would go off.
I know we were told something similar to that, and I'm trying to parse between stuff I was told as a tech and stuff I was told as a lab rat. Because that definitely is. It definitely is the checkoff kind of, if a gun comes out in a scene, it should be used in some way, because it seems weird to bring it out and not use it.
Yeah.
This might be completely off the topic, but I feel like if you have a gun registry for like concealed, don't bring your gun out if you're not prepared to use it, I think might be the philosophy that is.
Right.
That's how much I know about guns, right? But I think that's true of anything in any scene, like, right? The best scenes are things where you like threw away a piece of paper at the beginning of a scene, but then that piece of paper is what wraps the scene up at the very end. And so a gun is bigger because it has more potential effect and has a sound effect that is pretty obvious. But there's definitely a philosophy of improv that anything you add to a scene should be used in the scene and needs to be referenced at the end of a scene to wrap it up. You are providing all the tools you need. And that is a Brendan Jennings thing too, I think. Like, he was the master of both keeping a suggestion from not being shown on scene, but then that being the solution to the entire problem in a scene, as well as just remembering what had happened in a scene and bringing it back up.
Yeah.
And so it kind of blurred the lines a little bit, I think. But like, I agree, but I also think that maybe some of that was also a warning about more inexperienced techs. Because like I talked about, there is gun, I have that. Boom.
Yeah.
And not, but that's always, I mean, it's always going to be like that. And honestly, because it is, if you don't pull it out and shoot right away, when you do shoot is really difficult to judge from the booth.
Yes.
So that might be part of it too. But I think maybe it was more meant to be like, hey, if you pull a gun out, it'll probably go off because the tech will want to play it as a note.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think if you pull a gun out, it's important in a scene. And there was a period of time where we had a joke going where people would pull a gun out and then throw it away. And then we would play the gun blast, like as you threw it to the ground, something that is probably a Mythbusters that it doesn't actually happen, but seems to happen in like old timey movies where they drop a gun and then it fires. I know that there was a period of like 3 years where we thought that was kind of funny from the booth. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, not if you threw it away because you were getting rid of it, but like you threw it away out of anger or something, and then you play it, and then you'd be like, well, now somebody's got to die, and we're going to go on with that.
One of the things I love about what you were saying about blackouts as well, like I got to black this out or whatever it is. I feel like having someone that you trust up in the booth allows you to put yourself in those moments where you know, I can do this because Charlie's going to black me out before I get to the part that would be not for this stage. Or before I get to the moment where I would hurt myself, or before I get to the moment where we actually kiss, or whatever it is.
Definitely a couple of moments. Kiss used to be one of the big ones, was like, oh, we're going to go in for a kiss, and then we block it out.
Yeah.
And because that's the end of the scene. It's not like the middle of the scene, but also.
Right.
But then kisses are one of those things that is really, in the years that I've been doing improv, especially the man-on-man kiss has just been such a wild ride as to what it means, what it establishes, what it's taken for. That's one of the biggest cultural shifts, I feel like, in the world, but as it relates to improv scenes, because improv scenes have classically been more male, and luckily we've also shifted in that sense. But I don't know. I also think that maybe a man and a woman kissing on stage that are just actors is also a little strange, because you kind of know that in the back of your head and you're like, that seems awkward too.
Yeah. Well, and if you've established that they're brother and sister,
that too. Or,
yeah, some kind of weird relationship. Someone needs to write a book in terms of like improvisers' experiences, especially for those of us that have been doing it for a while, in terms of what could you get away with, or what did you do at one time that you thought was fine. Even Rob renaming P. Sparkle.
Yeah.
Which, it was called for and awesome for him to do. And because, it just like, this doesn't seem right anymore. I need to change this. And I know some of the audience warm-up stuff has changed from some of the things we used to do.
I've made a conscious effort, and I don't even know if anybody's even noticed it, but there was just a moment where I suddenly realized, what I'm saying is wrong. We used to always say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to SAC Comedy Lab. And I was like, we need to add something or do something about that, because it's not just two genders anymore. And I thought about it, and I did and there's lots of ways that people add a third thing, but for some reason, adding a third thing just, to me, and I'd love to get input from people who actually come from that part of the world, but a third thing just seems like an add-on for me. So I've literally been, welcome to SAC Comedy Lab, and just skipping the whole thing. And I don't even know if anybody's even noticed, but for me, that was a personal thing that I was like, we don't want to start a show by alienating a group of people in the audience.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back, I can remember when we first started Lab Rats and stuff, like when we got categories for vegetable and fruit, there were certain answers that were given that were funny 30 years ago, but are no longer probably things you should be saying.
Yeah. I know, it's like when talking about some of our first improv experience, we need the Disney disclaimer.
Yeah.
It's like, these things were wrong at the time and they're wrong now, but, we've grown or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like having that support from the booth and trusting that person up there allows you to put yourself in some danger because they have your back. And I feel like we miss a little bit of that with the absence of the shoe. We were relying only on the tech.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the shoe gave us some of that. I don't know if we ever really framed it that way, and I understand why people took exception to it, because when we were in Rhode Island, I saw my first ever legit theater sports show.
Yeah.
So the judges, which are not in the audience, the judges are part of the show and they're cast. They have the horn for the warning for boring.
Yeah.
And if they squeak the horn, the scene is done. And the way that was set up is, hey, if the horn goes off, it doesn't mean the scene was bad. It just means the judges were done watching it, which I thought was a very fun kind of setup.
I mean, that's basically what we've always said about the Pink Shoe, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying the scene was bad. We just didn't think it was going anywhere. And so we'd rather get into something better.
Yeah.
Or something different. Yeah.
And even that it wasn't going anywhere, I think we could reframe that a little bit, because maybe people take offense. Because if we have the shoe and say, look, improv is by definition experimental theater, not all experiments are going to go the way that we want them to go.
Yeah.
Some of them might become dangerous. There's just zero knowledge of what's going to happen because we're experimenting. So the shoe is really here to allow us to experiment.
Yeah.
To allow us to say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do a scene that doesn't have an ending. It's going to be a great scene, but it's going to not have an ending, but we can end it with this. And I don't know if that's more or less awkward than just a blackout. It's more of a 6 degrees sort of an end.
Yeah.
But we need a punctuation. It's just a punctuation mark for this scene so that we know that we've ended it, even if the scene itself is still rolling somewhere.
Yeah.
In some alternate reality.
I agree with the concept. I think that if you're rating them, though, a blackout seems less harsh than a pink shoe, just because a blackout makes it feel like, and that's the end of the scene. So it should have ended there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas a pink shoe definitely is an interruption of a scene, but a blackout, some people might think, oh yeah, that was a blackout because that was the end of the scene, and not even realize that there was something else happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just my first blush thought of the thing you just brought up.
Well, yeah. I mean, even when the shoe was in play, I feel like blackout was always the preferred method.
Yeah.
But there are some times when it was just like, there's no way to black this out that doesn't leave the audience going, huh?
Well, I can't completely speak for them, but I think part of getting rid of the shoe was also that Chekhov's thing that we were talking about, where...
Oh, if you introduce it, then you have to use it?
If you introduce it, you should try to use it at some point. And if we're doing a good show...
Yeah.
Which 95% of the shows are good shows that don't even need it. Then we introduce the pink shoe and then we never use it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the bigger catalyst of taking it away, is because we were hitting successful shows at a rate where it stopped making sense to even introduce it without it ever showing up for months at a time. We'd be like, wow, we haven't seen a pink shoe thrown for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then why do we have it? I think was the thinking.
And see, the mischievous part of me is as then we say to the actors, like, look, there hasn't been a shoe. Y'all need to take some more risks.
No. Okay. I thought you were going somewhere else. I thought you were like, oh, we haven't had a pink shoe for a while. So you got to take a dive. Do a horrible scene. You need to do a horrible scene now. No. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, we need to take some more risks.
Yeah, do something more experimental. Do something just the weirdest shit you can think of. Go out there and do some avant-garde something, and maybe that succeeds too and is the most amazing thing everyone has seen. But if not, we've got this. Maybe we don't need the shoe for that.
Yeah.
Maybe the shoe is more of a Lab Rats Gen S, sort of a teaching tool.
Yeah, and since we don't have that either, it's not.
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think, because I also think that maybe as a whole, and once again, I've been out of SAC for enough since we've moved that this is more previous to that. But I feel like we've also kind of gone down a hole that it's like we need to do the things that are successful. And maybe some of that is because we no longer have not that we ever had rehearsal, but I feel like it's a lot more random who we perform with now, who the ensemble is, kind of thing. And it's not as tight as it used to be. I mean, I remember the ensemble being Jay, Megan White, James Newport, and Ryan. And it was every ensemble show was the four of them.
Yeah.
And then it was two other people, which was either one of the two Matts, Sewell or LaRue, or Clark, or Brendan Jennings when he came around. It was four people, and then a pool of 5 or 6 people that would fill in. But every show had those same 4 people. And so they were so tight. That was the generation where it was like, you'd come to a SAC show, and you'd leave going, I don't know if they actually made that up, because it was so tight.
Yeah.
They would do a Christmas show that was a little bit more scripted, but then have the dance to Bye 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 memorized by 6 of them. And so when they needed to use it in a show the next year, they all could do it simultaneously and together.
Yeah.
And you just start to go, this is too good. You know what I mean? There's a moment where improv gets so good that you start to go, I don't know if it's got that improv in it behind it anymore, because it's the best thing in the world. And I want to say it as a compliment, but they just knew what everybody was going to do and knew how to use each other in a positive way, set each other up and stuff. And it was just the most solid thing you ever had. And then after that thing, we're now in a place where we've got 30 people in the ensemble, and it's a random collection of 6 of them. And I know artistic directors and the people who schedule try to spend time trying to craft that a little bit, but it's not the same as the previous thing. And that comes with positives and negatives. I know my best friend from college, I took him to an ensemble show and he said it was okay, but he said he liked watching the Lab Rats and the Gen S shows happen, because the Lab Rats and the Gen S shows, you had no idea what was going to happen. And he loved that so much more than the super amazing improv that the ensemble was doing, because you never knew what was going to happen. And I see that energy come with the Thursday night shows that we've been doing and any of the student shows, where you've got people who haven't been sat in the same place that a lot of our improvisers have been. And so they'll offer references either because of their own personal lives and it's what they think of. And it's just something that none of us would have thought of. And it just creates scenes that you have never seen before at SAC. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
But I think that it's cool that we are allowing those elements to happen. But going back to your question, I think as a whole, we aren't quite as experimental with scenes as we used to be. And I think maybe that's because we're not as tight-knit, or I don't think they rehearse. You know what I mean? At all. And we need to take that next step. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a collective practice.
Yeah.
Like we did with 6 Degrees, or we did with Offsides. You were meeting every week and practicing and then doing shows. And we just show up and we do a show.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think even when I was there, because I hear some of the stories, I hear Dave talking about getting duct taped to the back wall. And I was like, that never happened when I was there. That type of thing never happened. I feel like we did some stuff that would have been a little more out there, but nothing like that. And nothing like some of the stuff I've heard from Megan and from other people.
But you also have to a grain of salt with age. We're all getting to the point where any of us get duct taped to the wall where we're not going to work the next morning. I mean, like, there used to be a running joke about having somebody streak on like their last show at SAC or something like that. Like, there was a little bit more nudity on a regular basis from SAC. I know I one time pretended to be naked in a Lab Rat show. I was still wearing my underwear, but I had a giant sombrero in front of me, so nobody in the audience knew that. So I think maybe some of that's youthful exuberance too.
Yeah.
And we don't have as much of that as we do. But back to the original question, like, I think maybe we aren't being as experimental as we could be or had been in the past. But I also think some of that, it feels like it's a product and we need to make sure it's as successful as possible.
Yeah.
Were you around when we did, and it might be a Bob thing, but like if the show's doing really good, the second scene in the second half was just like an experimental scene where we just got the randomest thing from the audience, or we were like, what 2 games do you want to see mashed up? Or we get a suggestion and we would write a game around it. I think one was like Penguin Party or something. And it was literally everybody on stage was a penguin and they were doing a scene, but at any time I could play music and they would all dance as penguins and then we'd go back to the scene. And we don't do that kind of stuff, I don't think. And once again, I can't talk for the current SAC because I've been away for about a year.
Yeah.
But I think that's also because we all just want to be like, we just want it to be good and we just want to be successful. And so there isn't that anymore, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of external pressures too, right?
Yeah.
Because especially there were a lot that pandemic killed.
Yes.
There's a lot that lost their space during pandemic. And SAC weathered that storm. SAC has weathered lots of storms.
And that's a credit that I will give to Chris.
Yeah.
That would not have happened without Chris doing all the like business stuff Chris has done in the last 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. There's been a cycle with SAC of that kind of thing. And I think part of the pressure coming out of that is not only that we want it to be good, but hey, it has to be good. It has to be good so that people come and buy tickets so that we can survive. And I would posit that part of that is that playfulness and that experimental aspect that's always also been a part of SAC that also ebbs and flows a little bit. That's such a part of this, making the SAC experience unique and special and memorable. Not just that you went and you saw an amazing product, but you saw this thing, you were surprised, and all of these things happened that you that were unexpected. You know, I don't know where the line is. It's a tough call to make sometimes, but I do remember the Game Lab stuff we used to do. I think I remember the Penguin show, especially because that was Orange Avenue, right?
Yeah.
Where that happened. So that I remember, and I love that. And that is definitely something like you got to have the audience on your side. And that's something I think SAC has always been good at, is getting the audience on your side. And once you have them, you can do that. You don't want to start the show with that because they'll walk out. But if you have them, then you're like, okay, you're with us. We're here together. We're going to do something just for you that no other audience is ever going to experience. And maybe it fails. I think that's the part of the shoe that I kind of like, is that, hey, look, if this fails, we're going to celebrate the hell out of it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I understand that. Yeah.
I don't think it was ever set up that way when I was there. It was never set up as a celebration. We always kind of set it up as a penalty.
It would be interesting to introduce Game Lab as the pink shoe scene.
Yes.
Where you go, okay, here's the pink shoe. We're going to try something. We don't know what it's going to do, but we got a pink shoe to get us out of it if we need it. And then that's how that would be really cool.
This next scene is going to end one of two ways. Either Charlie up there is going to black it out at the perfect time, or it's going to go so far off the rails, the only way we can save ourselves is to throw this shoe, and we're going to love every minute of it.
I haven't thought about this until just now, but I also think maybe the loss of Gorilla is sort of, not to blame, but another reason we don't do as much experimental stuff is because I think Gorilla was a great opportunity to do the weirdest thing you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
And then if it worked, you could move on to stuff. I don't think Gorilla invented purse scenes. I don't remember where that came from, but it feels like the kind of thing that Gorilla would have done first, and it would have been so successful that we're like, oh, next time we're in a non-Gorilla show, we're going to do this purse scene, and it's going to be great. And that's how we gain some new games, I think. And without that, we don't have that was sort of a pipipeline that is no longer there to experiment with.
Early show, I feel like we got some games out of early show too, because we'd rack our brains and be like, okay, what can we do that's not the same 4 games before we do our long form set? What are some other things we could do? And so that led to some experimentation.
Yeah.
Let's get to this Proust questionnaire. So for these questions, you can answer them either as Charlie the tech or Charlie the onstage performer.
Okay.
Either way, whatever flavor you're feeling in the moment. Charlie, how do you get into the proper headspace to play?
Taking a moment and chilling and talking and stuff. just being with people, just being with the people you're going to be performing with. Even if you're sitting down and, we're just talking about what we did that day, we've started doing check-ins, and that's an additional thing that really helps, I think, in terms of like knowing what you should or shouldn't be doing on stage. But just like vibing, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those kids words that I've taken to, like just vibing and understanding, and then also like talking and being friendly and just being in the room for like 20 minutes before you have to go out on stage. I wouldn't want to not be talking at all, but like I think that if you just put the 6 people in the room and they didn't say anything, they would already start to be like on the same page about stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything specific that I would be like, I need to have them make me a peanut butter jelly sandwich or something. What would that be? But yeah, like, I mean, like anything, you want to communicate, look at, talk to, feel out how everybody's feeling. So, you're like, oh, are you going to do this today? Or, oh, they're a little low energy, so maybe I have to pick it up a little bit. Or just if that person isn't feeling well, they're not going to be the person they normally are on stage, and that's fine. But then maybe I take that mantle on and I'm the one who's the tumbleweed this year. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Anything like that. I've talked way too much to say the word vibing.
Well, no, I mean, that's basically what you're talking about too when you were talking about doing categories before the long form, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the long form made so much more sense when we all like, if we've all heard the same 30 words together, that's the closest we're ever going to be to the same place that we can do artificially in 5 minutes.
Yeah. What is your favorite get for?
I don't really have one, and maybe this is more as a tech thing. It's been so long since I've gotten a get for. I like stories. They're fun. A lot of people, I like a long story that gets a get for, but I also like that after several people have gotten a fairly straightforward, quicker get fors, because it's not the rule of threes, but it's like unexpected. You know what I mean? Like if we are doing a little bit, but I also agree with the people who are like, you can't use the word non-geographic location because that makes no sense to anybody. I think that's a word improvisers came up with, and no audience member understands what they're asking. But we also have short form, so we have to get so much more than a long form audience. Like an long form audience is like, give us something, a word, an emotion. There's so many options that they have. But I also like telling a quick little story to get us everything everybody else has said. Jose's amazing with his like, what's a lie you've told?
Yeah.
And Jay's amazing with his sit down and talk to the person and be like, hey, how's you going? How you doing? What did you do today? Yeah, okay. When you were there, what did you eat? Oh, okay. Calamari is the suggestion for this scene. There are ways to do it that are great. I stand your line, which is I do not want a person to get a suggestion. It's used the Walmart example. I don't want Walmart to be used as the way of getting a suggestion and then a scene be in a Walmart.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, don't, like, it's fine. It's fine. I have to get over myself that way a little bit sometimes, especially when I'm seeing other groups. But it's just like, no, that was your suggestion. You suggested Walmart. They said fruit.
Yeah.
Because your next question is what's a bad suggestion? And that's a bad way to get a suggestion for me is when you say that, but then for some reason, the only thing you remember is the thing you said yourself.
And I feel like it's setting yourself up or making it even more difficult for yourself if that call and response or that get and the response to that gets a big laugh. Then are we just trying to duplicate that experience we just had with the laugh on stage by doing the same situation with the same sort of things? Like, no, we all imagined it. What we imagined may have been better than what you're going to do. So put it in a different context for me, at least. Like, challenge yourself a little bit that way. And it's difficult because it's implanting an idea. Sometimes it's hard to uproot that before you get the scene going.
Well, and that's the critique that a lot of, like, when they make fun of improvisers on like a TV show or something, it's like, well, the audience member said this, this, and this. And so you went up on stage and you did this, this, and this. And then the audience was like, hey, that's the thing we know. Yay. Like, that's the critique that they give for that. There's a little part of me recently in my brain, and it's just the way my brain works, is I've gotten to a point where I'm getting really annoyed with, basically it's fake improv. The thing that really annoys me is false spontaneity. Okay. And it might not actually be false, but I've seen a lot of things recently where they've been amazing or they were good, and there were things that seemed spontaneous in it. And then thinking back or seeing how it plays out, you're like, you made that seem like it was spontaneous, and it wasn't. And these aren't improv shows that I'm talking about. These are other shows that are pretending to be that.
Yeah.
I remember watching, when we were all locked down, I watched The Man of Two Governors or whatever that is, the show that made James, the late night show guy from England. He was also in several episodes of Doctor Who. Yes. It made him famous. And at one point, they bring an audience member up on the stage. And then so much stuff happens to that audience member that you go, that's got to be a plant. And then suddenly the whole thing is ruined for me. And I'm saying that's a me thing, not anybody else's fault. And I've seen several things recently where I've been like, I've enjoyed this entire thing, but I'm pretty sure the things you made seem like they were spontaneous aren't. And that didn't make the show worse, but I wish you had been able to make it seem like you weren't just making that up on the spot.
Yeah.
And that's just something that's been eating at me recently.
I think a reason that that's part of you is because you're one of the people that actually watched Quick Wits.
Yes. Well, and the other half of it is also, because I was actually talking to a guy from Dad's Garage recently about this. And it's like, we know people who could do what you're claiming you're doing for real, and it be 85% just as good as what you're doing, or 90%. And some of this came up it wasn't technically spontaneous, but we were talking about Back to the Future, the musical, which we saw. And the tech for that is amazing. But some of the songs that aren't the songs that are classic rock and roll songs are songs that I know if we took that music and we let anybody at SAC sing, the lyrics they would come up with on the spot would be better than these lyrics that were written, rehearsed, and sung daily for several years.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing. It's like, I know there are people out there who could do the thing you're pretending is spontaneous for real. And it's not that I don't like what you've done. I just don't want you to frame it as being spontaneous as much as you are.
Yeah. I would say that, you said that it would be 85 or 95% as good, but I would say if it's live, it's going to be even better.
Yeah.
Because part of the reason why improv is so good is the spontaneous aspect of it, but also being in the room, because you just get the energy there of, yes, anything could happen. And it's a different energy than when you're just staging it to pretend to be spontaneous, because the audience feels like, wait a minute, this is scripted, and it's a different feeling, even if it's really good, even if it's a really good sketch, it feels different.
Yeah, I was taking out the feeling in the room. And, and I guess I was also factoring in the fact that, like, the show I was seeing, they had somebody come out with multiple different impersonations. And so the impersonations came out and they only had like 2 lines for each one, but it was jam-packed with references to the impression that they were doing. And what I'm saying is, we could do that, but it might only have 3 references in it instead of the 5 that you were able to write and know, because you knew it was coming, that kind of thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm also factoring in the fact that, like, once in a while, it would fall on its face. So like scripted,
yes,
you've got a safety net. But I know people who could do that for real. And so it just annoys me a little bit.
Okay, yes. You were right. The next question is, what is your least favorite suggestion?
And it's the classics, you know what I mean? Like, I want to hear something interesting. I don't think this goes against the improv rules, but there was a nice, fun moment of about 3 months in my life that my wife and I go to, like, Chicago a lot, and we were in New York and stuff. And so I had the same suggestion for multiple different groups. It was only when they opened it up to, like, words. It wasn't like, what's your favorite color? I wouldn't insert it there. But it was like long form stuff when they would be like, hey, what's an idea or something like that. My word was inheritance. I think my wife had been watching Succession or something like that. And I was just like, oh, that's such a juicy word. And so I gave that word to multiple different people, including the David Charles show you watched on YouTube. And it was just so neat to see that, but it was so juicy a word that I just really enjoyed it. It's stuff like that. We don't want political, we don't want pop culture, we don't want cheese, spatula, that we don't want sex terms, we don't want gynecologist. As they classically say at SAC, you don't want to see us do that. You really don't want us to see us do that.
Yeah.
So, like, don't suggest it, because one of us might go, okay, and do it. And then you're going to be like, ew, that was disgusting. Why did I sit there and watch that?
Johnstone, and I think I've said this before, but Johnstone is like, some of the suggestions aren't intended to help you.
Yeah.
They're to draw attention to whoever said it, to get the laugh. And that's fine. If it got a laugh, don't use it. Go somewhere else, because
it's already wasted. Yeah, it's already done it.
That match has been lit. Move on to another. So when you were doing that, did you get a lot of those places to take inheritance as a suggestion?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, I definitely saw. Oh, it was great. And especially because it's like they were all long form type things. So it was a while.
Yeah.
But it was great. Okay, I'm not saying my suggestion was great, but what they did with it was amazing because there's always like it's interpersonal relationships. And it was just always interesting. Some people took it as like a thing, and some people took it like what the relationship with that person who passed away, or like it was just. It was so interesting to see how basically it was three big groups just took it completely different ways, but got so much out of it. It felt really cool. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the idea would be that any suggestion they get, that hopefully they get off. So it's not like the show would have been half the length if I hadn't given that suggestion. But
yeah,
I really enjoyed comparing and contrasting the three shows.
Yeah. And one would wager that if you'd shouted edible panties at each of those, that the scenes probably would have been more similar.
Yeah, exactly.
If nothing else. Do you have a favorite way to burn a suggestion, or that you've seen someone burn a suggestion?
Well, I think I've seen people say basically what we just did, which was like, that was really funny. Can't match that. Next thing, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, well,
yeah.
there we go. That was the joke. Can't do anything with it. Let's move on.
Yeah. That is a good one. I don't know if we've actually said that. I was just thinking for some reason of Jim, who would even start with, he's like, okay, whatever you're thinking of, whatever you came with, throw that aside. Now think of something else, put that aside. And now what is, he'd even prime the pump to begin with.
Well, and a lot of people, recently there's been a lot of, what are your two initials? What is a occupation that does that? Name an occupation that fits those two initials, kind of thing. And then you're actively making up something too, kind of a little bit. But you're also just getting out of your head. Initials, or Simon had one at one point. I think it was when we were getting suggestions for genres for Seen Three Ways, where it was like, what's a three-letter word? Okay, well, there's the letters. Let's go with that kind of thing. I don't know if that was him. It was, people use it a lot, I think. But it's just like, if you're asked to make something out of nothing, it's really hard. But if you've got a jumping off point and it's something like a letter, it seems like it's a lot easier for somebody to come up with stuff. And then they don't have to do all the work, because maybe I'm just coming to this now, but I think maybe sometimes we make the audience do too much work. And so that's why they do say the obvious stuff, is because they're like, well, I don't know a city in a country outside the US, so I'm going to just say banana or something like that. You blew my mind. It's after work. I've had a beer and I came here to relax, and now I'm doing homework. So
yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I also think it's funny then, and I also agree with what you said. I love the initial thing and I love the letter thing because, like you said, you are creating something then in the moment. And so if you say, what's something that begins with W, and someone yells out banana, you know that they're not doing that to help you, and we can make a joke about it and move on. But I think it's funny that you're right. I think sometimes we are making them do more homework, but then we're also, to get them out of that, we're saying, hey, what's your initial? W? Okay, great. So what's a city that begins with W? And then we're kind of reverse. We're making them do the same amount of work. It just doesn't seem like it.
Well, hopefully they can come up with an initial pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because they're definitely,
This could also be like, what sets off red flags when you're in the booth and you're seeing this happen?
Okay.
So the question is, what do you look for in an audience volunteer?
Ooh.
So what would you look for in an audience volunteer? Or when you're in the booth, what are the red flags you see in people getting audience volunteers?
I think there's a show at a theme park where they sort of say, if you can get an older woman from another country, that's what they're going for. I don't think that works for us as much, but like, because that show, they're scaring them a little bit and being a little strange with them. And so their reactions are always a little bit bigger because honestly, they might not know what's going on. You want to look for somebody who wants to be on stage, first of all, but then also doesn't want to be on stage too much. Although I think we've had great success, not bullying, but getting somebody who has been a problem on stage, making them do something, and then sending them to the audience with a respect that allows them to stop being as annoying as they were previously.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of talented improvisers who have been able to flip that around. For me, I want somebody who wants to play. Like I said, with that teacher thing, I did a arms expert teacher thing about computers, and she was a little handsy, but she was like there and wanted to play. And I mean, it also, because she was handsy, it ended up skewing the topics into like antiviruses and things that were like on the edge of being sexual.
Yeah.
But that all came from like her in her arms, you know. And I think the red flags are things that, like, if they're too drunk.
Yeah.
If they don't want to be there up at all, if they're too much the leader of their group. Like for a column scene, everything they're going to say is going to only be for that one group that they have, which is also another problem for people who would alienate the rest of the audience because their 14 people that they came with would react to things and the rest of the audience would feel like they're not part of the show anymore.
Yeah.
Which has happened a lot too.
Those people are usually the ones we're doing slices for. So
Exactly. And sometimes it's like these two people. Now, the worst slice that we've been getting recently, because you can buy them ahead of time and it's just like on the website and stuff, we keep having these dudes who are like dates and like first and like second dates. And because that's the only option, for me, the reason I think it happens is I feel like it's the only upgrade that we offer on our website is this thing. And so as a way of looking fancier or spending more money or just like trying to be impressive, they book a slice for a date that they've just met. And then we have to deal with that on stage. And it's just not good because they don't like this is usually the beginning of the date too. And so you're already putting this person in an awkward situation to have to get up. Like almost, I want to say half the time we end up flopping it around and making the person who bought it go up on stage instead of their poor date. Also because it typically is heterosexual males who are buying it for a woman that they've never met before.
Oh.
And not only that, it's two people in the audience. It's not a birthday party of 30 people, so at least half the audience enjoys it. It's two people, and one of them is on stage not enjoying it, and the other one doesn't even know what it is, but was just like, hey, I spent money on this woman. She should be impressed by that.
Yeah.
That's not good.
And it's on the right track now, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So they're able to like, at least we didn't, they're going to be doing the interview anyways. So it's not like we're missing then the like pages of information that we used to get for inside jokes and stuff. But it's totally awkward. And it's almost like a bad marriage proposal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine you've seen a few of those.
I have. And everyone that has been talked about on this, I think I feel like I've been to. Not only that, as a tech, when they say we're going to have a marriage proposal, the entire show, I'm just sitting there going, I don't want to do anything to mess this up. And I know that it would be really tough for me to do something that would mess that up, especially anywhere before the thing actually happens. But like, I'm in my head the whole show going, I'm nervous. I feel like I'm almost more nervous than I was when I proposed. It's a big distraction for me when it's happening. And when they're great, it's lovely and it's a great way to end the show. But I'm just like, that show's a waste for me. There's no reason I should have.
Yeah, well, I mean, when that started and when you started teching as well, I imagine that was a little bit lower stakes because, like, if you hit the fart sound effect as they're getting down on one knee, that happens. But anymore, if that happens, now maybe it goes viral. And
this is just me overthinking it. I'm not even thinking stuff like that. I'm like, am I going to play a piece of music that accidentally references a wedding in the first half that like, or you know what I mean? Like just weird stuff like that, right? Like, or somehow I give it away and I don't even yeah. That's the level of overthinking that I'm doing while I'm spiraling. It's not me worrying that I'll accidentally play the gun sound effect and the improvisers are going to pick off one by one as this thing is happening. Because, I'm not worried about that. Although now that I've said that, I probably am. Yeah.
That's nothing I would have thought of. I love that. When you're on stage, do you have an onstage persona? Or I don't imagine in the booth Charlie is that much different than not in the booth Charlie. Although you're multitasking, so you're definitely working on another level than when you're just walking down the street. But is there any improv persona that Charlie has?
I was thinking back because I know you and Rob talked about our personas in 6 Degrees. And I was looking back at that and I was like, I was just me. And that was apparently the persona that I had as the virgin. And it was just like, okay, so I'm just innocent. How am I playing that in things other than not wanting to be shoved into people's boobs? So I don't really think I do on stage. I'd rather answer this question with a fun game that we played at Lab Rats one time. And I don't know who was teaching at the time, but they had us go on stage and improvise as if we were the worst person we could think of as an improviser. And then we went on stage and we're like, pick somebody that you admire and you think does really well at improv and try to improvise like them. And I picked Greg Yates. And I flapped around the stage and I moved and I did everything energy wise that I could. And and at the end I was exhausted, but it was just amazing. And it was just so freeing. And I just like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So yeah. And that kind of goes into that thing you've been talking about. Like, well, if you're going to fake it for a little bit and then find out who you are. And I felt like in that moment, I was like, yeah, this would be really cool, but I'm exhausted after one scene and I don't know what to do about that.
Did that change how you played after that? I love that exercise.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great exercise.
I don't know who said it, but it was brilliant because other than the slight bullying that some of the people took with the exercise in the beginning, because you know how lab rats is sometimes, like there was a little bit of like, well, I'm clearly being this guy.
Oh yeah.
But also some of it was stuff like every once in a while we'd have a person who was more of a stand-up than an improviser. And so like that kind of makes you chug along in a scene or like hit speed bumps in a scene because they're trying to be funny instead of that whole thing. But other than that, yeah, it was great. I think it freed me up a little bit. It definitely was a thing that I thought of when I was improvising. And in fact, I did get a chance to improvise with the ensemble like once or twice. And the first time I did it, I purposely listened to a podcast Brendan Jennings was on my way over to SAC. And then when we were at SAC, I remember us all warming up with Greg and we played Fun, the song that they did.
Yeah.
And I think it was Some Nights. And then we just ran around stage dancing and being active all together. And that's a moment of improv that I will never forget. And then we did the scene. It was great. But that was definitely like the way we warmed up that day is burned into my mind.
Well, this might feed into that or play off of that. Then what inspires you either on stage or in the booth? What inspires you when you're at a show?
I want people to have fun. I want people to be happy and joyful, but at the same time, I also like to see people think and people exposed to new things, but also find interesting new ways of looking at stuff that will surprise an audience, I think.
Other than knowing that there's a proposal coming, is there anything that shuts you down or takes you out of it?
I mean, all the obvious things, like a drunk audience or people being mean. I think that there are times that I have definitely felt like, not talking about audience members, but like when somebody would do something that feels over the line in a way that for some reason I feel sensitive about. And while in general, I'm not a big sensitive person, I definitely am empathetic with people enough that sometimes I feel for them. And sometimes it's wrong because even they don't care about it.
Yeah.
But like if somebody does something that feels wrong, that also will get me to black out a scene.
Yeah.
If I feel like we've taken a step too far and we need an edit in a way that way it takes it off the audience member. It takes it off the player for saying it, kind of. You can be like, oh, blame on Charlie. He ended the scene or else we would have seen where that dildo went or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But both helpful, but also being like, I'm uncomfortable at the moment. And if I feel like the audience is uncomfortable, I think that's what my real thing is getting a sense from the back that the audience is uncomfortable and the players don't seem to understand that for some reason. That I think shuts me down a little bit.
Yeah. You were talking about Schwarzenegger Die and 99 Jokes. I am not a fan of Sex With Me is like.
Okay.
Which is one that's played a lot of other places and have experienced it in a few different places that I've seen it. And one of the places I was like, okay, I feel like not everybody on stage is into this.
Yeah.
And I feel like that most of the suggestions and most of the laughter are coming from bros out here in the audience. And, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Oh, and that definitely 100%. That is a tough game to play. And I think that some people can. I think that Penguin Knife Fight, I think, was a group that could get away with it because I feel like everybody on stage was of equal horniness or something like you know what I mean? Everybody on stage and everybody in the audience was totally down for it. And that's the way it does. I also feel like there was an episode of Game Changer on Dropout. And Dropout has been a interesting way of finding improvisation as a film's thing. And I find it really interesting. But they did a whole episode, which was basically Sex With Me. Dropout has like a semi-reoccurring cast, right? So over the years, you kind of get to know each of them through all the various shows, through like the game show or the secret show or stuff like that. So they brought out the people that you probably would have said were like the most horny. And all their horniness is somehow they managed to be horny in a very pan way, if that makes any sense. Like they're just horny. Somehow it doesn't feel fratty when they're horny.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're just we're just generally horny. And so they got basically what I think is the three of the horniest / dirtiest people that they had to say it. And then it just felt great because everybody was in on the joke. It was only the four of them even talking. I wouldn't want to do sex with me with like an audience member. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
No, like don't bring an audience member up on that. That's nuts. But that's the thing. That's when like the penguin knife fight. Like if everybody's on it, it's good. But then, yeah, that's got to be the first one that like fails real hard if it gets weird.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the way that it succeeds is everyone on stage needs to be in it and up for it, but it can't be something where it's like, I don't know if I'm real. Well, then don't, like, and it's fine. It's like, well, don't put them on stage for it.
Yeah.
Like, if 4 people are really into it and want to do it with those 4 people. Don't have it be an all play.
Yeah. They could even sit on the side and be on stage. They don't have to leave the stage, but if they're not in the scene, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't force anybody to be in it because if they're uncomfortable, they're not even going to do it well. Like and if you're not doing it well, then why are we playing this? So like, let them have that escape hatch.
And it is a very popular pun game. I think Comedy Sports, I've seen it at Comedy Sports too, I think.
Yeah.
That's fine. I would much rather do a Schwarzenegger die or 99 Jokes. I feel like those are harder.
Yeah.
I feel like Sex with Me is an easier. It doesn't have to be, but it can be easier. But anyway.
Weirdly, Schwarzenegger Die turns very Sex with Me-ish often. Like, I feel like somehow the puns people know are all dirty. Like, somehow that's how you learn puns by being dirty, and then you can learn puns that aren't dirty. But the first puns you learn, and the puns that are on, like, the base level that everybody knows, somehow they're always euphemisms for stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a fan of innuendo and euphemisms, but I would much rather it be delivered in a Schwarzenegger Die package because then it's not expected.
Yeah.
Versus the other. I've seen some very funny puns in Sex with Me as well, but I'm more of a fan of the more complex ones or the ones that takes a beat to figure out and like, oh.
I feel the same way when everybody was doing The Office and they were doing That's What She Said. And I'm like, there are times that if you get a sentence that is a good like 10 words and it uses, the word box is a great lower echelon word to use in a sentence like that, but could mean a lot. And if you tag that, then it's like, oh, that was impressive. If you have to, like you said, think about it and you're like, well, no, and that, and then that, oh, okay. You have to have at least 2 references that don't mean what they mean, but they sometimes can't. Like, you can do that, but it's the same thing. Yeah. A really good one of them is amazing, but most people are working on a level that's so low that you're just like, no, this is stupid.
I'm probably just a pun snob. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'll own it. I also love the idea of, because I wasn't thinking about this when we were talking about it before, but when you brought it up just now, that you're protecting the actors, but you're also protecting the audience with the blackouts.
Yeah.
So you're playing both sides of that, which is amazing.
Well, I'm also the person, nowadays, because we moved where the piano was, I am the only person in the audience. So I can vibe a part of the audience that the people on stage can't see. And so there are times when I can see when stuff is happening because I'm behind them instead of, and you guys can't see it on stage. I'm not saying that a lot of times, but sometimes, I can feel it.
Yeah. In your estimation, what makes a good scene partner? And this can be something you've experienced or just things that you've seen.
Someone who listens to you, someone who you know. You can do improv with people who you don't know, but the more you know somebody, the better the scene partner is. Somebody who trusts you, somebody you trust, somebody you know that if you say something, they will bounce off in the perfect way. But that's the same way with teching, like the best partners in a scene for me are the people that I know if I do something, they won't ignore it. They will know that it comes from a place where I'm trying to be helpful 90% of the time. And they will acknowledge it. And that's great.
We may have already said this. Do you have any advice you'd give to your younger self?
I'm thinking too much about it. Like, obviously, take that stagecraft class.
Yeah.
Try to get into lighting and stuff like that. But at the same time, then if I had done that, maybe I wouldn't have ended up where I am now. And I've said a million times that, like, it takes the entire life that it's taken me and all the little weird things that have happened for me to be where I am right now. And I'm super happy where I am right now with my family and my wife. And all of those are things that are tiny little things happened. I never would have thought I was going to go to college in Florida. That sounds like a party school. But then after 3 semesters of Carnegie Mellon, I was like, you know what? I'm not really getting anything out of this and I'm paying way too much. So I end up in Central Florida because my dad was on a work trip 20 years before that and was like, hey, there's a school in Orlando that does TV and radio. And I was like, okay, I'll go do that. And so I did that. And then that made me find SAC. And then SAC is the reason I met my wife. And my wife was only in the place she was because of a million different factors.
Yeah.
I also don't know if I know anything. I mean, other than try to take it easy, try to be chiller. Not everything is as crazy as you think it is. But I also don't know if I feel I have grown enough as a human being to actually be happy. I feel like I'm still reacting to stuff the same way I was 20 years ago, and I don't feel like I've necessarily grown as an actual human being. So honestly, I feel like maybe I need to give some advice to myself now and grow so I could give myself advice from the future.
I do think being even self-reflective now is something probably you wouldn't have been in the past. So that is a sign of growth, even if you don't feel like you've grown as much as you should have or would have liked.
Yeah, I think the other half of it would be like I was definitely a kid who had not anger issues, but would get big upset sometimes if things weren't going my way the right way. And if I had some kind of way of giving advice to myself of being like, hey man, that's okay. That doesn't need to be, that's not a big deal. And you'll see that tomorrow. But at the moment you think it's crazy and it's insane and you're ruining your own birthday party because of it.
Just say thank you and you've got to go get ready for the second half.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your favorite type of character to play or see on stage?
A lot of the actors at SAC have such a fun child's voice character that they do. It's just always fun. And then half of them then use that as like a weapon against their scene partner to make them like uncomfortable or get them in trouble by having to have endowed them as doing something. And you're like, but I'm just a little girl, and that's always fun to watch because it's so sweet, but they use it so vindictively, but like not in a bad way. They use that as the endowment to make the other person bad and get on the audience's side. And it's so much fun to watch them do that because of the actor relationship beyond the actual relationship on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've always loved about SAC is that the show that you're seeing is so relationship driven, even when it's a really gamey scene, because it's the relationship that the audience has with the cast, but it's also the relationship the audience has with Jay.
Yeah.
And it's the relationship that Jay has with his fellow actors. And so there are all these things in play that are impossible to quantify that just build such a great package.
Yeah.
If you could do a scene or tech for anyone alive, who would it be?
I want to do a scene with Brendan Jennings so I can see him perform again.
Yeah.
Even though I was actually in level 2 with him when he came through and then busted out. But that was just such a fun experience just to see him working in level 2. Like he was doing stuff. He was creating characters, using those characters in multiple scenes and then retiring those characters just during the 8 weeks of class. And you're just like, what? You have a brilliant thing. And he's like, yeah, there's another one coming down. And you're like, but, it was so much. So yeah, I'm going to say Brendan Jennings so I could just watch Brendan Jennings perform. I'll be second support. Like, I just want to watch Brendan again.
Yeah.
Brendan was definitely one of those people who came and went relatively fast, but was such a big impression on so many people.
Yeah. If you could do a scene or tech for someone who is no longer with us from the pantheon of dead people, who would you wish to?
I would have loved to see Robin Williams live.
Yeah.
That being said, I do not think I would want to be in a scene with Robin Williams. But if I have to be on stage to watch that show, I will. Yeah. Like that kind of thing.
Well, see, and I think that, quite a few people have said Robin Williams. I understand why. And I feel like no one should be like, oh, I don't know if I can improvise up to Robin Williams level, because I think the great thing about that scene would be like, if I was in a scene with Robin Williams and I just froze, then I am now the prop.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So it's like no harm done, because he's still going to create magic out of me being a stump.
He'd be like the Roadrunner just running around and you're just like, and then you'd get like one word out and you'd be like, oh, okay. And then like start a whole new thing. And you'd just be like, you'd be just dumbfounded the whole time.
Yeah.
And it would be great, but like you wouldn't be doing anything. You would be just trying to make sure you stayed upright. You know what I mean? Like on stage. And that's it.
All right. How about fictional?
Ooh, I'm going back to the live person. I want to do improv with Weird Al Yankovic. Weird Al, I feel, is the kind of quick person. And so maybe I will use that as my fictional character because I want to do improv with Weird Al, not Alfred Yankovic.
Yeah, I think that counts for sure. You can improvise a new UHF. We are still waiting for the sequel. So this one, you can answer either way, but I'm most interested in the opposite of what I've been asking people. Because usually I've asked people, what is the most helpful from the booth?
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what is most helpful in the booth from the stage?
The first thing that comes to mind are, if there's something you know you're going to want from the booth, set it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like scenic, and it goes the same for pianos in the studio. Sometimes when we're doing something like in the studio, the actors like to say a long thing and then at the very end tag it with the style they want. And it's humorous, and I get it, but then you've left no time for the person who's supposed to pull that up to pull it up. If you're going to do something like that, you need to maybe talk for a second, then say the name of the thing you want, and then talk for it for another 5 seconds, because that gives us enough time to pull up the sound effect, to pull up the piece of music, to set the settings on the piano to the right settings that they want to play that piece of music. You've got to know that we need some time, even in the fastest of us, and even me who's watched a million shows and knows where this thing might be going. There's a lot of times where if you want something that specific, you can't just point to the booth and go, Lady Gaga, because that there's no way, especially with the way at the moment the booth, as we've gotten away from that iMac that I was talking about earlier, as we've gotten away from that, the response time of the computer programs and the way we search the computer programs has gotten slower. Before, we were working with that sound program where literally you could type in 3 letters. If you knew the sounds well enough, you could type in 3 letters, know that jumps to the sound, and press enter and have it in a fraction of a second. In the other ones, you have to go and then make sure you got the right one and click on it. We were also using just straight up iTunes. And so you could type in the first 3 letters of that and jump and hit enter, and it would go right away. Now we're using Spotify. You got to click. You got to type most of it in, push click, wait for it to go, find the thing you actually want, click on that. We've added more time to try to give us better options, but it's never going to be as quick. So you need to prep us, not before the show. I mean, before the show would be amazing. Especially, because Gorilla, and there were also several times that I feel like it's Dinger and Greg and stuff would be like, we have this fun idea that we're going to do, but I need this song, Iris, for instance.
Yes.
And I would be like, good, thank you for telling me that now and not making me try to figure out what you're talking about later. But even on stage, in the scenes where it comes up spontaneously, you give us a little bit of time by putting it up front and then talking about it instead of talking about it and then springing it on us. Because you're springing it on the actors, and that's the funny part, but your support needs more than that.
So if they shout Lady Gaga and for some reason you were thinking they were going to shout John Denver, and then you just played John Denver or the pianist does a folk song anyway, I mean, what's wrong with that?
Well, and hey, if you then don't comment back to me, like as long as you're cool with that, I'm cool with it, honestly. You know what I mean? Like if you're accepting it and you're yes-anding it, that's really cool. But if your expectations have been ruined by it, then this is the advice I'm giving you.
Yeah. Would you say the least helpful from the stage is the opposite, or do you have a pet peeve from the stage, the least helpful from the stage?
Not 100% of the time, but I think if there's a sound effect that is really, really late, that's one thing. But commenting on a sound effect that it's just a little bit of late, but it's not so late that it's done anything different in the scene, is stopping the scene. I mean, it's the same comment you would say about anything about commenting something in the scene.
Yeah.
But it applies to a sound effect. I mean, obviously, if it's 3 sentences later, it's fair game. But if it's a fraction of a second later, the audience doesn't really know and it's going to go with it, especially if the audience is like, yeah, okay. If the audience doesn't seem to notice that there's something weird going on, then don't call it out in a scene, because you're just going to stop the scene and you're going to make the tech feel bad for not being even quicker.
Yeah. Well, and as you were just illustrating, there's only so much of that you have control over.
Yeah.
There's lag time. You got to compensate for the lag.
And if you haven't prepped it, a lot of times for some reason people kill people by just suddenly I got a gun, and wanting the sound effect. And you're like, we've spent years convincing the techs they shouldn't fire the button as soon as it shows up.
Right.
But you're like, but now you're shooting, and I do not know there's a gun in the scene. The thing that not everybody talks about, but several people have commented on, like a glass shattering when I'm there at the perfect time for that. It's because you sat there with a glass in a scene. Like, it's not like you went to the cupboard and threw one down. You've been holding a glass for the last minute and a half. So when you pulled that glass out, I went to the glass sound effect and I just sat there and waited until something else came up that I might have to grab, or you threw it on the ground. Like, that's why it came out so well. But that's because you were clearly, it was clearly an option that opened up in a scene.
Yeah.
It almost feels like not Matrixy, but like that thing where some people can like be like, well, if this happens, then these are the 3 options that probably are coming up, kind of thing. It's that kind of thing. So if you bring out glass on stage, I'm going to pull up glass because honestly, 75% of the time you either throw it on the ground, or when I'm feeling sassy, you'll do bad space work, and we're gonna have fun with that too sometimes.
Yeah.
Depending on the flow of the show and who it is and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But 75% of the time, that glass is going to end up on the floor, so we'll probably need some kind of glass. The other thing is when they've led up something like that, but then they pull a gun out, so you hit the button and it's a glass, and they're just like, well, oh, I guess I shot the window, and it's like, well, because you didn't introduce the other weapon until 2 seconds into it. So, of course, I'm going to react and I'm going to want to play. Like, and some of that is like, well, I probably should just do nothing. But, like, you've got that tweak insert to be like, oh, I play it. And I was like, oh, that was the wrong sound effect. I was like, well, you didn't introduce that until just now. So, like, how was I supposed to know to jump to that other sound effect?
Yeah. You had a bow and arrow in your hand for like 3 minutes, and then suddenly pulled a glass out of the cabinet and threw it to the ground. What did you want?
Yeah, exactly. And that's also one of those, it's funny, and it's just a Schwarzenegger die, so that's okay. But like, there definitely was a period of time, I don't know if we do it as much anymore, but there was with the old sounds that we had, there was a sort of curve, like the flow of show, like Shape of Show.
Yeah.
That I would play for that also, where we'd start off with just a normal gun, but then we also had the opportunity to move into bow and arrow or a machine gun. Like, there was a heightening of things and stuff. And sometimes people would have a problem with that. And it's justified if you were specifically that. And I guess that's the other thing is when somebody goes up and specifically is going to kill somebody, but then stabs them instead because it helps with the pun. And it's like, well, I saw movement and I'm going to play a sound effect that is the sound effect we normally play in this situation. So you need to go maybe take that knife out, lick it, and then stab it in, and that gives me enough time to jump to like squishy sound effect kind of thing.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always enjoyed your arc as well because, just the rule of 3s, usually we do it 3 times, sometimes more if there was a tie, but you can't have a tie with just 3.
Wait, no, we've had ties because there have definitely been times where we're like, well, both of those sucked. So we're just going on to the next
one. So I love that amount of thought coming from the booth. The host and the tech are so helpful in terms of Shape of Show and crafting that.
That actually comes up with another thing. I also try to do the same things with the lights themselves. Like, you'll notice that when we do our warm-ups, like when we do a freeze tag, it's just going to be white on stage. And then we'll probably move to a categories or something, and there'll be a little bit of red for like evil. But like, I try to not put out a lot of colors and fancy things in the beginning of the show, so that way as we go through we can pop in with them and they seem a little bit, especially when the beginning of the show is just sort of like you're starting to create it. So I sort of go, okay, we're going to start with a little bit of white light and then maybe a little bit of red because there's the competition happening. And then as we go into scenes, I'll give you a lot more things and maybe a gobo and some other stuff like that. But we don't start in that situation. And and especially with the games that we play in the beginning, I think some people are a little bit like, oh, each time somebody tags out, I want to change the scene up. And that's fine. But for me, it's like, no, this is just this base stew that we're starting. And we're not putting in the good ingredients until later in the show.
Yeah. I love that. And I agree, especially because it's going to be a lot harder with freeze, for one thing.
Yeah.
I know when I hosted, it wouldn't be until after the elimination round, they'd say, okay, now we're going to start this scene and all remaining scenes here at SAC from a blackout and a countdown and introduce that bit. And it's just like, until that moment, the first scene happens, it's still kind of preamble.
Yeah.
But now it's like, now the show has started.
Exactly.
And there should be more spectacle or whatever because we're into it.
Yeah.
I buy it.
You just show a couple of things up front, and then that way people are surprised later on when more interesting, or you want to save some of that stuff. I have to credit Jay Hopkins because I worked for Jester Theater for a while, thanks to SAC, and we were doing fives, but the scene was about Degas. And at one point they were like, there's a prism of light on the wall. And so it was a light and that we had made, and it was really fancy, and it was using like multiple inserts and stuff in it, and it looked really cool. But it was like, you're not going to use that light earlier in the show because you want that to be the first time they see that light.
Yeah.
And so it's the same sort of philosophy. Like back when we had the like snowflakey thing, you needed it exactly when it needed to. And it was at the beginning of the show. If you got these cool things you can do, you don't want to use them way up front. You want it to be a surprise later on, like anything like that.
Yeah. And it helps with shape of show, just the build for, you don't start with your encore, but also you're always riding the line of, you don't want to be distracting. So if you hit them with something amazing up top, then everyone's like, oh, when's the next tech thing going to happen?
Yeah. And we don't often have that many amazing things. And then there's a weird gray area where a lot of people wanted to come out to smoke, right? But a show where nobody used the smoke, and then the smoke crawls in the middle of the second act in a scene that makes a lot of sense for it to crawl in. It surprises the audience in a very pleasant way. Whereas if everybody had entered in the smoke, they would be like, well, we already knew you had smoke.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that entrance wasn't fun, but to take that philosophy and apply it to everything else too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than laughter, is there an audience sound you revel in?
Okay, selfishly, I like the ones where they're like, or, oh, like when they recognize either that I've done something from the booth or that I'm playing a song and they understand what's going on. Sort of that thing I said about Anna, where she would like look in the booth and be like, I got it. That personally, as a tech, that's always fun because it's always nice. But I think the things I like the most from the audience is sometimes we've had players be able to become the villain in a way that's so surprising. People in the audience literally gasp. And that is amazing. Anything of that level where the actors have been so engrossed in the thing. Like awes are easy. You can buy those a dime a dozen. It's easy to like sucker somebody into an awe. But like not in a disgusting grasp, but like in a, oh my gosh, that went the way I did not know he was the bad guy the whole time kind of thing is, and to have somebody so invested that they're not even thinking of it and that's why they're gasping is so amazing, especially in an improv scene that is so potentially disposable.
Yeah. Yeah. This next one ties in with that. Is there a sound from the audience that makes you uncomfortable?
I don't think I have one.
What is it that you're picking up on in the back of the house that you say sometimes we're unaware of on stage, but you're like, oh, I need to black this out?
The thing to answer your second question is more of a, I said the word vibe too many times, but like,
no, I get it. Oh, yeah.
Just that like uncomfortableness and a little bit of like either distracted talking or just being too quiet that they're not enjoying it anymore kind of thing, or something.
Shifting in their seats.
Yeah. Something weird, but also if the whole back half is just like in a place that's like, it doesn't feel like it's right, I will be more likely to black out a scene when I find the best way out kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't want people listening to this and be like, well, Charlie's just going to randomly black it out whenever he feels like it. I mean, I still find the appropriate time to do it, but like, but it's nothing specific. I guess it sounds I hate from the audience is when I can sit there and watch them, especially without being stereotypical. Usually it's a male husband of somebody, often with kids too, who's sitting there and like watching like football on their phone as the thing's happening because clearly their wife or their kids dragged them there and they're having a great time and he is just not into it and doesn't even care and is just watching. And that's what I hate from an audience. It's just like, this is 1 hour and a half of your lifetime, dude. Support your family and just be there. And you might like it in the end. That's okay. And if you didn't, that's also okay. But at least open your door far enough that you can maybe enjoy it.
Yeah.
Especially for your kids who are clearly having, but then I don't want them to look and be like, well, daddy doesn't even like it. He's like watching his phone. Maybe I should be like him. And maybe it isn't funny. If you're having fun, have fun. And if you're not having fun, don't disappoint your family for it. But I also completely don't understand relationship dynamic where the spouses don't actively encourage supporting each other. One of those like 50s or 60s marriages where it's like, well, he goes to work and then he goes drinking with the boys and then he watches his TV show on the TV and the wife stays at home, takes care of the kids, cooks the thing, and then doesn't have anything she gets to do on her own. She just sits there and the family watches the thing he wants to watch on the TV. I don't understand how people are in things like that. I mean, ideally, obviously, so like just the fact that clearly the wife brought you here to have some fun and you are just so rejecting that offer that you're not even looking at the stage anymore.
I love that you framed that improvisationally as rejecting an offer.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say that it sounds to me like the audience sound that you makes you uncomfortable is the sound of children's hearts breaking.
Yes. That reminds me real quick. SAC did the best scene maybe 5 years ago. I saw them do a scene 3 ways, and one of the ways was Democratic and one of the ways was Republican, and they pulled it off with such grace. I was floored by how well they did it. They really digged in to like, it was so interesting because the way they did the Democratic side was all the things that the other side would make fun of the Democrats for. They really leaned into that. And then in the Republican side, they basically were just like truthful, but which made it additionally funny to somebody watching. It was because they had to work really hard to make the Democratic stuff they were saying funny to people. But when they did the Republican, it was just like, oh no, you're just imitating people who exist right now. But the way they towed that line, and for some reason, this reminds me of that. Oh, it was just so spot on. And the entire audience loved it. And nobody seemed like they were pissed off by either side of it. And they managed to go just deep enough that it was like, yeah, they're not doing it, but not so deep that anybody would be offended from it. Oh, it was just done so well.
Wow. Do you remember who was in it?
I have no idea. All I remember was just being so pleasantly surprised at how perfectly, like that was one of those moments where it felt almost like it was scripted, where potentially was that false spontaneity. You know what I mean? Like because it was so perfect. They didn't say anything particularly for either side that would make them feel like they were making fun of them specifically.
Yeah.
Now, part of that was also because one of the sides believes those things so hard that they don't understand that another person saying those things back to you isn't supportive. But like, yeah, it was so perfect. It was so perfect. And I wish we had some sense of who was even in it, but it was just, note for note, perfect.
Maybe someone listening will remember or will have been in it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd love to ask more about that. I love that. I mean, it had to have been amazing if you remember it this many years later.
Yeah, it was so spot on. And it was recent enough that it was an even more of a stretch. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the two sides, if you brought stuff up in theater 40 years ago, it wouldn't cause stuff. But now it was recent enough that like, it could easily have been a problem real quick, which means it must have been in the last 10 years.
Yeah. What is the worst venue you've ever played or teched in?
All the generic ballrooms that we've done gigs in just suck.
Ballrooms do suck.
Anytime they're like, well, we're going to let them eat too. And you're like, well, that's useless. Or we're going to do something else in the back also. And you're like, well, then nobody's paying attention.
Yeah.
I remember doing a prom where I think it was one of those schools that did not dance for their prom.
Okay.
So this was what was happening instead. And I feel like a handful of the kids were into it, but the rest of them were just moping that they weren't dancing.
Right.
And I think that was the vibe of the entire thing. To sort of flip this on its side, one of the best gigs I think I've ever done was a gig that SAC gave to the Lab Rats. And Simon and I were the only people who answered the call. And maybe this is like went from bad to good. The two of us were sent to the Florida, I think it was State Thespian Festival, to perform during their lunch. So it was just like, it wasn't a performance. It was sort of almost as spontaneous as Bob's story, but had specifically been sanctioned.
Yeah.
So they're all out on this like sort of quad outside area. And we're backstage and we're trying to write the show. And we're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. It started off with not bad vibes, but it was just very much like, there's no microphones. We're just going to stand up on this knoll and sort of like try to do improvisation for these teenage thespians who are going to have opinions. And I don't know who did it. I think we did it collectively, but we were like, you know what? We know how to fix this show. So we went out there, we did like a quick little warm up, but then instantly everything we did included as much audience participation as we possibly could do it. I mean, we were almost barely in the show because we just had people come up and we did categories with like 8 people. Oh, we did a dance square kind of thing where somebody leads dance. And at one point they ran around the whole thing with like 8 other people following them and stuff. And we turned the entire show on the audience and had specific scenes we were doing, but we would bring them up on stage as much as possible. And the show ended up being amazing because that's exactly what all of them wanted to do. They didn't want to watch an improv show. They wanted to do an improv show.
Yeah.
And so it was a thing that was potentially could have bombed or flamed out completely. And we just, by going, no, we're just going to do all the audience participation we can and double the amount of people we get for it.
Yeah.
And by doing that, everybody had fun and it was just amazing. And we're like, okay, cool. We got out of there without being, killed. So it went from potentially the worst venue to the best venue. That being said, maybe it's my positivity, but like, I don't remember anything that was so bad that we had problems that weren't just the venue's fault. It's planning or situations where they didn't put things in the right area kind of thing. I never did the gig on the buses. Like that's a legitimate answer. Either that or I've just forgotten about them because I remember the fun ones much more than the horrible ones.
Yeah, that's good. What's the best note or best words of wisdom that you've received?
Well, I've already taken one from your podcast. That's Rob Ward saying, hey, if the tech talks, introduce yourself as the tech before you start talking. So that's one. Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And then I've sort of said it like notes where it's like, hey, you can't have an ego if everything works as a tech. And this is just in general. That means nobody's going to say anything. If normal people start talking about the tech, that's a bad sign. Like that means something went wrong or you were doing something wrong. And while that applies to stage shows as a whole, it also kind of applies to improv. Like we're pretty good at praising moments that are great. But for the most part, if you go through notes and nobody said anything about the tech, that's a win. That's not a loss. That is definitely a win.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is, well, I remember one time, I don't know who it was, but some person who wasn't somebody who was familiar with SAC regularly. And we just had in as a special, like maybe they taught a class, but I don't think it was anybody like so crazy that I wouldn't have remembered their name. It wasn't Wayne Brady or anything, but somebody who was there did say at one point, they were like, oh man, it was so cool because I was doing the scene and I forgot what the suggestion was, but then I looked behind me and on the lights back in the Amelia Street one where we had a whole bunch of colored lights on the backdrop, but they didn't blend. They were individual color lights. And he was like, I looked back there and it was the flag of Spain, the colors of the flag of Spain or something like that. And then I was like, that's what the suggestion was. And then he turned around and was able to do the show or like remembered the thing. And that was a really nice compliment. He was like, I didn't remember what it was, but then I saw the colors of the flag and I was like, I know exactly what that is. And then was able to do the scene. And I was just like, there you go. And that was definitely from somebody who wasn't SAC regular. So anything like that probably was surprising him. The other one that I really remember is, it's not really a note, but it was something that you and Greg said when you came back from Chicago the first time. And you're just like, after being in Chicago for like 6 months, we completely respect you 100 times more than we did before. Because we don't have any of that stuff here in Chicago. And that really touched my heart too. Was like, oh, thanks, man. Like you're my friends anyways, but having that reminded is a good thing. And it's a good thing to remind everybody at SAC is like, we have a space that is very unique. And I know a lot of people talk about this. When you go to see other shows and stuff, you're also like, oh, but you're like, because they might not be great, but that's because SAC is some of the best improv and has the setup that is some of the best in the entire country.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to go somewhere else and see something better than SAC. And I feel like some people either don't remember that or take it for granted. And it's a good thing to remember that like we have it so nice at SAC for a variety of reasons. And you just remind yourself of that when you're performing there kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And because, there are a lot of ways that if you come up through SAC, especially just performing at SAC, that you're spoiled. And some of it is you don't know what you've got till it's gone sort of thing. And that was a lot of that is just like, wow, Charlie and the other techs are some of the hardest working people there, and they hardly ever get the credit for that. And we even didn't realize the full extent of it, of what it actually brings to the show until you're doing a herald in a room that has one disgruntled pianist, and maybe your coach is in the back to hit the blackout button, and that's all the support you have. And that's all you quote unquote need. All you need for theater is a performer and an audience member.
Yeah.
That's it. And you can do some sort of theater, but it's just so nice to have all that. And the package, even just show wise, comedy sports, they definitely have a package. The theater sports thing, I understand a lot more now, but the package that SAC puts together for a show that includes music and lights and all these other things is definitely the outlier for improv theaters. And yeah, it is. I love it. And it's a great product.
That's why we need to bring people here and show us off.
Yes.
Like boast, be like, look at us and our wonderful theater. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah. Is there a least helpful note that you've received, or what's the least helpful note you could conceive of if you haven't actually received one that was detrimental?
In life, it's something like do better.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, what do you think I was doing? Like you think I wasn't doing the best I could at that moment?
Yeah.
And if you have something specific, say something specific, but just a general note of like do better is like, well, that doesn't mean anything to me at all. But that's more of a life gripe. No, I mean, most of the time, and maybe it's SAC being so good, but usually most of the people, and like I said, at first the ensemble didn't really know me, and that was the older ensemble, and so they're just like, they would say weird stuff, and you're just like, sure. But now it's like, if there is a note, Jose one time was like, hey, how about you try this song for Kick It? And since then, I've always used that song. Because he was like, this is going to work a little bit better than the couple of weird rap beats we have. And once I did, I was like, yeah, no, that works perfect. That's great. A bad note would be one that was just uninformed, but also nasty.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, well, first off, what you just said doesn't exist in the world or something. You know what I mean? Like where you're just like, whatever. Or maybe that would be an easy note because you're just like, well, if you don't even know what you're talking about, there's no reason for me to care what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess if I really want to try to answer the question, it's when there's a communication breakdown between what the actor is trying to give you a note for and what you know as technical jargon or things like that. And so they think they're using something, and it takes a little bit of time for you to figure out what they're actually saying. I have to do that a lot in my job. Is I will get, they're not notes, but like, hey, this thing happened. And you're like, okay, well, what does it sound like? And what are you thinking that word means? Because then you're like, oh, okay. Like, oh man, I had one group that keeps saying that there's a delay in the sound. And I'm like, I can think of like 1% of a way that happens, but for the most part, if the noise is made, it's going to go through the microphone and out to the speaker instantaneously. It's not like it's a water hose where you can like close it and like build it all up and then let go of it. So like delay is not the thing you're talking about, but like that's what you seem to say. So I have to like figure out what you actually mean. So that's the problem sometimes is they'll say something and you're like, okay, let's see where we can figure out what you actually mean from that.
Yeah. Don't try to put it in sound jargon.
Yeah.
Just say it and then I'll translate for myself.
Yeah. Because there's also a thing called a delay, but that wasn't what you were talking about either.
Right. So it wouldn't just be have as many open cups of water near the board as possible.
Oh, well, yeah, don't do that. And I mean, all those things like, okay, so the big thing is mic drops when they got popular like 15, 20 years ago. And then people started just dropping mics and you're just like, no, that's not good. That damages the mic.
Yeah.
For some reason, that was a thing for like 20 years. And everybody thought it was funny. And it was just like, no, you're just destroying stuff. Now, I understand sometimes you want to use a microphone for like, if you're in a scene 3 ways and you're doing a documentary and you pick up the mic stand and hold it like it's a boom mic. I'm like, I understand if it then falls off and that was understandable. But like when they were purposely dropping the mic, you're just denting the thing. And those things are, I mean, they're not super expensive, but they're $100 each basically.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. And you now owe us $100.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if there were an Academy Award for everything improv, what would Charlie be nominated for?
Oh, this I thought was going to be hard, but then it's easy because it's like tech. But if I wanted to be broader than that, I would like to think that I'm support or finding a way to add something to a scene that helped find the resolution of the scene, kind of thing. Because that is what I'm sort of trying to focus on when I'm in the tech booth, is what are the things that they are going to call for that I can play, but what are the things that exist in the environment that they are, either they're set up or are tangentially enough. Like sometimes they say there's a bear on a campsite, but then sometimes they're just camping and you know there's a bear. And like I said, if you play that sound at the right time, if there's a lull in the scene, it will spark an ending.
So if we were going to phrase that as a best of whatever for Academy Awards, would it be anticipation, best at anticipating a need?
That's also one, yes. Anticipating a need and finding a button. If the button wasn't the end of the scene, it was 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so you may have answered this one a little bit as well, but if you were remembered 100 years from now for something you've done improv related, what would you want it to be?
Honestly, at this point, like I started with, the talk about what 6 Degrees did. And while I didn't start it, I was a major part of it for a while. And I love that it helped jumpstart a lot of people and gave them their first experiences. And I don't know what more I could possibly do. I guess the other thing is I feel like I've inspired others to also tech, or at least I want to have inspired, and I have. It's not a hope thing. It's do something in the tech booth that makes somebody in the audience who is an improviser or somebody on stage go, hey, I've never thought we could do something like that. Let's see what we can do with that. Or I want to be a tech so I can be in a position where I can do that for a scene and it makes it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, it might not be 100 years from now, but I feel like I've talked to people who have been inspired by just one little thing I did to then go tech or learn about tech or use me as their reference point for what a good improv tech is.
Yeah.
So I mean, 100 years is far enough that, like, I used to overthink about that with like being a president, right? You're like, what could I do to be a president that's remembered in 10 years? And they're like, okay, what could I do to be a president that's remembered in 100 years? And there's a lot less of that. And then what could I do to be remembered as a president in 1,000 years? And it's basically, well, Washington already got the first thing. So the only other thing I could possibly do to be remembered as a president in 1,000 years is to be the last president. You know what I mean? Like yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know why. That's just one of those weird things I thought of when I was a kid.
That's it for this interview with Charlie Downs. If all of this hasn't wet your whistle to get a qualified tech up into the booth of your improv theater, come and check out SAC Comedy Lab and get a taste of the possibilities. Better yet, throw a bunch of money at Charlie and have him come to you and show you how it's done. Find links in the show notes, look for the show on Patreon for bonus content, and thanks for listening to Improv Autopsy.